Alright, ladies and gents, just wanted to give you some directions on the Three Stooge project in case you're done with everything else. You're done with your World War I corrections, you're done with your stock market stuff, you've already cashed out, you are finished with your totalitarian study guide, and you're done with your Cornell notes. So you've hopefully taken out your headphones and you're listening to this. Just a quick reminder, a link to stocks are right here. We're in Unit 5, Russian Revolution Totalitarianism. I moved week 4 up here so you wouldn't have to scroll down to find it. Once you go week 4, I'm going to turn this off real quick. Once you go week 4, it's going to look like this. Social changes presentation is here. Your table of contents pops up over here. If you go to Unit 5, A6, Three Stooges, Dictator, Skits, there's going to be 2 examples. Example 1 is kind of the beginning of a dictator. Again, this is satire. You should certainly satire some of the things that some of the key terms that you have. Again, it continues here talking about key ideas at the beginning of World War II, and they're continuing to make fun of the dictators and how they relate to the rest of the European leaders. The European leaders are in suits down here. So take a look at those 2 examples, and then you'll notice right up here there is a attachment. Here is your assignment and rubric. You will be in groups of 3. Put your names here. Person playing Stalin, Hitler, and Mussolini. Objective, you're going to compare and contrast the governments implemented by Hitler, Stalin, and Mussolini in the areas of propaganda, economy, discrimination, secret police, and government definitions in class with 100% participation in short skits modeled after the Three Stooges. All right. You are required to work in groups of 3. You will be tasked with creating a skit using slapstick humor to satire the totalitarian leaders of the 20s, 30s, and 40s. Each student will need to be involved in the skit, with each student having a minimum of 5 lines. I should say 5 lines. Skits should be no longer than 30 minutes and a minimum of no longer than 3 minutes, and a minimum of 60 seconds. Discuss each leader's life summarized in a skit. That could be an option. Okay, focus on fascism, communism, and authoritarian rule. We're looking at the difference between fascism and communism, and then authoritarian rule. And each of these guys kind of has their own brand of how to do this. Mussolini obviously comes first. Stalin and Hitler around similar times, but Stalin a little bit before. And Hitler, is intimidated by Stalin, but he also kind of modeled himself after Mussolini, but then doesn't have any respect for Mussolini. So it's a weird relationship between those 2. For 5 points, your skit defines the chosen term for all 3 members of the skit. So whatever you pick, and I'll show you that on the back of the assignment sheet here, whatever term you pick to focus on, that's what you need to focus on. So you could do their lives, or you could do the terms themselves, focusing on the difference between fascism, communism, totalitarianism, authoritarianism. If it simply defines the chosen term for 2 members, then it's a 3, and then doesn't define as a 1. Students memorize lines and have clearly rehearsed their skits, including slapstick humor and a direct connection to the Stooges. So if you're using some of that stuff, make sure you're not actually hitting or contacting each other, but we do want to use some of that humor in here because I think it will be fun for you. If you have your lines prepared and you're read from a skit, okay, so if you're reading it, but it's still fluid, you can go 3. If it's unorganized and it lacks planning, then it will be a 1. You need to meet the minimum and maximum time requirements. This will be done on the camera, so just look at the length of the skit. Make sure that you're not standing there with a lot of blank time, or you're not starting late or anything like that on the computer or on the camera. And then the skit needs to include at least 2 pieces of slapstick humor that was employed by the Stooges. So as you can see, the rehearsal piece and the inclusion is listed twice. It's kind of important. I'd like for you to try and do some of this stuff. If you try it, then that's going to be the key. So just make sure that you're doing your best and trying to give it a whirl. Okay. As we looked at in our Cornell notes, each of these terms is going to need to be given a main idea here. This is kind of the main idea of these groups. So for Mussolini, his secret police are the black shirts. For Stalin, they originally are called the GPU. For Hitler, he uses the Gestapo, obviously. The next one is the economy. Mussolini has a mixed capitalism and command economy. Stalin has a complete command economy, specifically talking about the 5-year plans. Hitler uses public works programs, and I have a book on this if you want to look at some of this stuff. The Eagle's Nest is one of those. The Autobahn is another. He's using public works programs in his command economy so that they can get their economy back up and running, especially after the harsh treatment that they've received from France in the Treaty of Versailles. So looking at a direct correlation here to start of World War II from World War I. Persecution. Mussolini expels democracy and logic. Stalin is a little bit paranoid and gets rid of everybody. Anybody whom he suspects of being an issue is sent to the Gulag in Siberia. And Hitler starts slowly with the Nuremberg laws, where he starts separating certain groups, especially the Jews, and then builds on those and continues to then escalate to the final solution. The government itself, what type of government is set up? Again, this talks about you got fascism, and Mussolini calls himself Il Duce, so that might be kind of a fun satire type item there. Stalin called himself Koba and practices communism, or what he calls communism in reality is probably totalitarianism. And Hitler is the Führer, and he's practicing fascism. And then finally, any pieces about the propaganda that they use, any outside research you want to do about propaganda, you can include that. So ideally here, if you had a 30-second skit, you would kind of focus on one of these rows. If you have a 3-minute skit, you might be able to get all of them. Either way, what I want you to do is I want you to try and focus down on these things. Each box is a main idea from your Cornell notes. Each person will need to share. So person A, just as we modeled yesterday in class, person A will share with B and C about Mussolini. Person B will share with A and C about Stalin. And person C will share with B and A about Hitler. And that needs to be done hopefully today before you come back tomorrow, and then tomorrow you'll have the rest of the time to work. So if you have any questions, shoot me an email or raise your hand at a stopping point. I'll be helping finish up the stock market, doing some banking, and then I'll also be helping with any World War I corrections that need to be made. Good luck. I look forward to watching your skits.